What's up, everyone, and welcome to Shared Save the Game Media's weekly gaming discussion podcast. I am your host, Kevin, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about PlayStation's multi-platform strategy, collective shouts, crusade against video games, and more. Before we get to that, got to introduce my co-host for our brand new show here at Save the Game Media, Sam Heaney. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. A little tired, as we were talking about beforehand, but not used to really doing shows with you. We've done a few spoiler casts here and there. I've been on X Talk a few times. This is a new chapter. It's exciting, and also not used to live shows.
That's right.
You know, the no limits. You think we were organized over there? Absolutely not.
Yeah, so I was telling you, we have a document. I don't know if you guys had a document. We got a document.
Some weeks
notes.
we did. Some weeks we did. You know, if we bothered with that, we weren't flying by the seat of our pants most of the time. But you know, this is nice. I like what I'm seeing, Kev. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I've had a busy week at work. I had a stressful day. I had a pretty bad migraine earlier. You know, one of those like sitting there, like, oh man, I'm staring at a screen. It just hurts. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm like counting down the minutes till I leave work, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna chill until the show. And now I'm feeling good. All right. I got some water. I've had some time to relax, watch a new It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. All right. So we're at a good place. I'm ready to kick off our new show with some energy, with some positivity. I see some people in the chat hanging out with us. Shout out Sam Hall, did his podcast last weekend. Great guy. Nissa Hauer in the chat. Shout out Nissa. We also have Ron Savoy Prime, my boy. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Spread the word. Let everyone know. We got a new show, Shared Save. We are going to be live every Thursday right here on youtube.com/Save the Game Media. If you can't catch us live, our audio will go up immediately for patrons over at patreon.com/Save the Game Media. If you want a public feed audio, the audio feed is going to be Project X Talk's old feed. All right. I've already changed it all over. You don't even know. All right. It's in the background. If you were subscribed, you're already subscribed. All right. You don't even have to do anything. All right. The episode will come in a few days. It's going to go live on Sundays for non-Patreon subscribers. Okay. That's the first change. All right. So no more day after. You're going to have to wait increase those Patreon perks. All right. $1 if you want it early, along with some bonus content that we're going to be doing. So once a month, Sam and I are going to do a bonus episode of Shared Save just for patrons. Plot twist though. The topics will be exclusively from our patrons. So every week, the day before this show goes live, I'm posting a thread on our Patreon to ask for submission for topics that the patrons can submit. And I choose one a week, and that's our third topic for the show. The other ones, I'm banking those, okay? Those are going to be ones we tackle in our private episode just for patrons, okay? So if you want to hear us tackle questions that we didn't get to, you got to go to our patreon.com, all right? Makes sense? Stick with me, okay? If you want to support us, like I said, go over to patreon.com/Save the Game Media. Choose the tier that's right for you. You can get our exclusive bonus content. We're also doing a monthly Q&A from yours truly. I'm gonna put out a thread eventually. I'll answer some questions. I'm already lost. As Wang Sheng Wims. I think that's Ghostly Guides. Judge you by the profile picture. I don't know why you changed the name. That's a strange one. But I do have to thank our current patrons for getting us here. I know we've been gone a little while with live content, everyone. So thank you to our current supporters: Savoy Prime, Sam Hall, Todd Oxtra, Alpaca Tom, Rick Davis, Silkenet, Dave Harp, David Hotright, Lillian, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Marcus O'Neill, Brendan Myers, aka the Winter Gamer, Nikolai at Night, Fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, and Brandon Jastrembensky, which I will never be able to say your name. Okay. Thank you all. We appreciate each and every one of you. That's housekeeping. So let's get into the format of what this new show is. I already told you our third topic will be from patrons, but essentially we're going to do what we're playing for the week. Then we're going to go into one of our topics. Then we're going to do the other person's topic. And then we'll go into the patron topic, round out with some listener questions. And that will be the show. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we jump right into it, Sam? Unless you got anything you want to say.
Let's go.
All right, Sam, what have you been playing this week?
A fair number of things, Kev. Primarily, unfortunately, I'm still on Wu Chang Fallen Feathers.
How is that possible?
So I am about 75-80% of the way through a New Game Plus run. Turns out, again, there's no map, there's no quest log, there's no nothing. My job is to map out all of the NPC interactions, and turns out there's a lot of secret ones that I completely missed on my first run through. So I've had to replay the game with a little bit of insight from the rest of the freelancers and a few of my editors pointing me in the right direction, and that's taking up a lot of time. It's been a far more, incremental playthrough, even though the first one already was. I'm going very, very, very slow now to try and ensure that I don't miss anything. I'm trying to utilize cloud saves as much as I can strategically. It's not going well, but the end is in sight. So hopefully.
So I see Bree talking about our levels in the chat. I turned myself up, Bree. Hopefully that helps a little bit. My mic's been a little weird lately. Normally 2 is the sweet spot, but 3 I've been having to bump it up to lately. Let me know if that sounds good. She said you were a bit loud. I'm not personally hearing that, but back to Wu Chang though. All right.
Yes.
I almost jumped into that game, and then reviews put me off of it. And I've been talking to other people, and they're pretty much in the same boat that you're in, where you're like, it's not really that good of a Souls like, right? It's kind of by the numbers, imitating a lot of the other ones, especially for me coming off of Lies of P, which I thought was a really good game. Like I felt like it was a good introduction to a genre that I'm not one for.
Yeah.
How would I fare jumping into Wu Chang Fallen Feathers?
I would say I don't think it's particularly beginner friendly. I think there's been a lot of contention and debate about this. I still think it's really actually quite difficult. And you're like, well, that sort of makes sense because it's a Souls like, but if you find the right build, I think it's a lot easier, but it can be quite difficult to find the right build. It's very generous in letting you respec, but yeah, it's just there's so many little quirks, and like can't really animation cancel a lot of things. You can get stun locked a lot of the time. Enemy health bars are like they vary from nothing to bullet sponges essentially. So I don't think you get on with it.
That's what I was afraid of. The one thing I was thinking is because I've heard it's less parry focused and more like dodge based, which does kind of appeal to me because when I did play Lies of P, I was mainly dodging.
Yeah, I that is true, I suppose. But even then, like, so there's a mechanic in the game called Clash where you essentially you can perform regular attacks, but if you have imbued your weapon with this specific Clash ability in the skill tree, those normal attacks will act as parries if they connect with an enemy attack at the same time. And that makes it a lot easier, but you do still have to be very strategic then about when you attack and having to read boss attack patterns, which isn't super difficult, but it's just a very about face way of doing it that doesn't gel with me. I will say I've eased up on it a little bit from my criticism.
That's good.
For the first playthrough.
That's what Stockholm Syndrome does to you.
That is true. That is true. Exposure, it does help. But I still don't think it's like great. I think it's serviceable. It's in Game Pass, right?
Yeah, it is.
So I would say to people who have Game Pass, it's probably worth trying out for like an hour or two and just see if you. I love the enemy designs. I love a lot of the level design, but yeah, the fundamental mechanics don't quite work for me. So hopefully, I'll be done with that by next week. So fingers crossed.
Hopefully, they add some difficulty options.
I take them, Kev. I take anything I can to just get through it. I'm kind of over it now. I was over it 2.5 weeks ago, but
Yeah, I remember you sending when the reviews dropped at the end of July. You sent me your playtime, and I was like, Jesus! And you've kept going.
yep, unfortunately so. Yeah, so that's Wu Chang. The other stuff I don't really have too much to say. I've played Maestro, which is
Unfamiliar. What is that?
so it's a VR game where you play as a conductor of an orchestra. So it's a rhythm game, much like Beat Saber or Synth Riders or things in that vein. And you have a stick in one hand and you sort of can raise and lower volume levels and point to punctuate different beats. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of licensed tracks. So there's Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, music like that in there. There's some Harry Potter in there as well, I think. It's great, and also with PSVR 2, it has hand tracking, so I can go controller free and actually use hand gestures and stuff to conduct, which is very, very immersive, and a lot of fun. And that's kind of replaced Beat Saber for me over the past 2 weeks. I use Beat Saber to sort of just do a bit of exercise every evening, and Maestro is sort of turning into that for me. It's not quite as excessive and exertive as Beat Saber is, but it's refreshing, I suppose, to play something different, especially now that they've stopped Beat Saber support on PSVR. It's like left a sour taste in the mouth,
Well, you and the dozens of other people using PSVR too
That's right.
are very disappointed.
There are dozens of us.
I mean, the game sounds cool. Someone, I did band in high school. I'm used to the guy, the maestro up there in the front. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty basic, but it is a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where you won't really get it unless you're actually in the headset. But that's the same for most VR games. So that's Maestro. Quick shout out to And Roger, which is something I heard about through Kind of Funny.
I heard Sam Hall telling me about this game earlier.
Yeah, it took me like an hour. It was a few pounds on Steam. I imagine it's roughly the same on Steam in dollars. It's a picture book story game that has very interesting mechanics. It's essentially I won't spoil too much because it is a very, very short game, but it's broken up into a few chapters, and each chapter does something very innovative with the mouse controls. So, like the first chapter, without spoiling too much, you are clicking on buttons white little buttons that pop up on the screen, and the way that they are implemented, how you click them, when you click them. It's pretty clever, very tied into what's happening narratively in the moment. And it tells I think it's a predictable story. Like I guessed what the end result was going to be about a minute in. But it was effective and it was told very well. And again, the innovation is really what I was enjoying the game for most over anything else. So it's a very particular type of game. It's not going to be for everyone, but I think that it is, if you like emotional stories in games and stories told without a lot of words, especially stories told through mechanics, this is a very, very, very good example of that. So heartily recommend, in my opinion. It's very much in the vein of something like Before Your Eyes. If people know if you know, you know.
I was gonna say that the whole telling a story without words thing sounded like as I say,
Yeah,
to me, which I beat but didn't vibe with because I see people talking about like, oh, this game brought me to tears, and I'm like, yeah, it's just kind of colorful to me. It didn't really do much in terms of a story. So, is it more in that vein, or is there like is it less subtle than that?
No, it's definitely less subtle than that. So there is like text.
Okay.
When characters are speaking to one another, but a lot of the actual storytelling, I would argue, is done through the mechanics. You aren't like WASDing, moving characters around. It is literally just the mouse. And it gets very interesting. It's a little bit trigger warning-y at points. It deals with some heavy subjects, but it left
Play
an
it while you can.
impression.
Play it while you can before it gets taken down.
Yeah. And then the last thing I've been playing is Peak,
which we share. Good old friend slop. So we can kind of bounce back and forth here if we want to talk about Peak for a little bit.
Let's do it.
I am thoroughly impressed with Peak. I think it's a very simple concept, but I think the execution is just remarkable in that it brings a lot of laughs for stuff that you don't even think you're gonna laugh at. So, like for anyone unfamiliar, Peak is I think it's like a $5 game from Landfall, and essentially you are tasked with your Boy Scouts. You crash on an island, and then you're tasked with climbing to the top of island, and each of the peaks you get to is a different biome, like a jungle, a lava area, a blizzardy area, and then you want to escape at the end of it, right? And you have to climb, you have stamina, you get hungry, you get status effects. Very simple in its concept and its look. But I think when you're playing with your friends, because this is the definition of a friend slop game, right? For what everyone's saying, the things that you get up to, because you have to like help your friends up or not help your friends up in some cases. You have to like feed each other to like try to maximize. Okay, I'll give you stamina so we can get across here. You have items like ropes to help you climb. What I found though is what's really keeping me engaged is just like the silly moments that happen during gameplay that are completely unintentional. Like, oh, let's go over here, and then someone steps on an accidental poison cloud, and it's like, we're all poisoned now. Or bringing things that you don't need just to have silly moments, like a teddy bear perhaps to the top of a mountain and then throwing them to his death. Or what I was doing the other day, I would take the Frisbee and then I would snipe people as they're headshot, and then they would fall over because if you throw it hard enough, they'll knock them out. So it's just those kind of moments, those silly things, those interactions that really, really make the game fun for me. I've put, I don't know, like 6 hours into it, and I'm excited to play more with friends. It's one of those. I wouldn't say it's pick up and play, because some of these runs can last like 2+ hours if you're going for a while, which makes it a little inaccessible if you are looking for something that's like a quick hop in, hop out thing. But those 2 hours are going to be absolutely magical.
Yeah, heartily agree. I mean, I've only done 2 play sessions, one with you, Kevin Bree, and then I did one with Sam Hall the other day. Would like to correct the record because, slander happening. He said I dropped the anti-rope cannon. Didn't happen. I passed out. And as you know, when you pass out, you drop all of your items. So then it started floating away. I didn't drop it. I'm not that stupid. But still, it might have been my fault that I fell unconscious. So we'll allow it. I concur with everything you said, though. Like, I'm not a multiplayer guy, really at all, outside of like Helldivers, like very specific case examples of multiplayer games clicking with me, and this is absolutely one of them. To your point about like how the runs last, I was thinking about this. It would be great, like obviously, if there was something like what Returnal did, where when Returnal first came out, you couldn't pause mid-run. I understand why they can't do that here because it's multiplayer. But if the host saves it and you could then rejoin the host with your friends, I think that theoretically in my head works.
Yeah. Same.
But even if that wasn't the case, I think that could be a workaround where if you knew that you only had like an hour or so, I would have loved it if they implemented a feature that lets you just tackle one biome. And then when you reach the campfire at that biome, you end the run. Or like you could set how many biomes you do. So like you could do a toggle bar where you say, I want to do 2 of the 5 biomes or whatever. And then you can sort of min-max exactly how much time you want to dedicate to the run. I think that might be a good option going forwards. I don't know if that's ever even possible, but outside of that, I really don't have any complaints.
No. Yeah, I'm thoroughly
So
surprised. And
yeah.
there's higher difficulties. Like I have a one buddy who's on like difficulty 6 or something, and there you get like no items. Like you get one flare that you have to bring to the top, otherwise you're not getting off the mountain. Like it's just they make it very difficult. So like
Mhm.
I would like to see. I think all those suggestions are great. But it is a fun time. It's just you got to schedule your gaming time around playing Peak, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll keep going because I've played another landfall game called Haste, which I
Mm.
think the full title is like Haste Broken Worlds or something. This is a game I played co-op with my brother. It's from the same developers as Peak. And this game I was told about by Jampack Sam like months ago, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, roguelite, it's probably not for me. No, this game does the roguelite formula perfect. This is exactly what I want. So essentially, there's 10 shards throughout the world. Each shard is like a different biome, different boss at the end with increasing difficulties. Like eventually you get to almost bullet hell status with some of the things you're dealing
Mm.
with. But it's almost like an endless runner meets platformer. So
Yeah.
you take off and you're moving at crazy fast speeds like Sonic, right? But the key to this game is every time you hit a jump, you then have to hit either the A or X button, whatever you're playing on, and descend and land on the slope perfectly to maintain momentum
Mm.
to keep going. And so they'll keep, starts off simple, just like grassy hills. Then they'll throw some towers in your way. Then you'll eventually have like lasers and holes and black holes and giant like mines that are in your like just crazy stuff that they throw in your way as you progress throughout the game. They'll add some bosses where you'll have to like go inside of a giant tank and navigate around the insides to hit the core. So it's a really unique game, but it's just so much fun to play. It feels so good and responsive. The movement is so fluid, especially on my new PC here, where I was like, oh man, I'm only running at 230 frames a second. It's just absolutely beautiful. Like I love the art style. There is a story there where story's okay, nothing to write home about, but you really are here for the engaging gameplay that's going to keep you like, oh, I want to keep going and going for the next run, because each shard has maybe, I don't know, 10 or so like levels, they call fragments in there, and along the
Mm.
way you'll get shards which you can use to like give a power up. Like, hey, every time you hit a perfect landing, you recover health. Every time you hit a
Interesting.
perfect landing, you gain a 10% boost, which if you're playing co-op, you're essentially racing your teammate. Not that it really matters, but like it was a lot of fun where I would pass Kyle at the last second and then tell him to like eat crap or whatever, like just fun stuff like that. Like it is a very fun game to play.
Yeah, I think I have in passing seen footage of this. I probably will actually pick this up.
It's great. Highly recommend, especially if you have if you want to play co-op or not, because there's like permanent upgrades you can get too. So after every shard, you'll get a currency. You can go to vendors and get new outfits, new items that allow you to do different things. Like you have a hoverboard doing boost speed, or you can get one that like, hey, you didn't make a jump. Here's like a cape that'll shoot you straight up in the air, so you can keep
Mm.
going instead of falling to your death. Like there's a lot of permanent upgrades to health, to shard pickups, to item rarity, stuff like that, that really just make the game very customizable. And it's just, you can play the way you want and you don't really feel punished for that.
Yeah, and it looks like it's perfectly viable solo as well.
It is.
So yeah, amazing. Added to the
Sh-
library.
Yo, shout out Daddy D Wally in the chat says, is this the new show? Yes, it is. This is Shared Save, a gaming discussion podcast. We're taking the place of Project X Talk, so we'll be here every Thursday. So people can tune into us before they head over to our friends at the Nerd Chat, 9:30. All right. I thought you were taking over the Nerd Chat. I didn't get the contract. No one, I told you guys to send me I sent you my
It's in the
fax
mail,
number.
apparently.
I sent you my fax number. I never got nothing. All right. Last game I want to talk about is I Am Setsuna, which is a JRPG from Tokyo Game Factory, one of their last ones. I will say, however, I am no longer playing this game.
Oh no.
I played about 3 hours and I was incredibly bored.
Oh dear.
I know, listen, hot take. I know people have a lot to say about this game. They love the music, they love the art style, they love the story. None of that clicked with me, right? Like I wasn't enjoying it at all. It seemed very generic to me. I don't really care for the art style. The movement's boring, but the biggest offender, and this is gonna maybe make some OG Final Fantasy fans angry. The ATB system is bad. All right. The ATB system is a bad battle system. Okay. The whole, I have to stand here until the bar fills up and then I can act. Like, nah, it ain't doing it for me. Either strictly turn based or some sort of like in between. That is not the battle system for me because I feel like I can't plan things. I did not enjoy it. That completely ruined the game for me.
Damn.
Yeah. So
sucks to hear that.
I am Sasuna. You're going in the to never be touched again pile, unfortunately. But that's all I've been playing. I see some people in the chat, Clutch's Heart. I don't know what's going on in the chat here. Someone is accusing me of something, but do we got a moderator? I'll take care of that. Sam, why don't we jump into your topic if you'd like to introduce that, my friend?
Yes. So if you were living under a rock, hello, welcome back to the real world. It seems the PlayStation is going to be pushing a little bit more into the multi-platform space. Shock horror. And, I've seen a lot of discussion, debate going on, wondering what's going on. And I wanted to open up, as we go multi-platform, as a channel in the podcast. I thought a good opening topic, especially considering it's quite relevant, is what we think is happening, what we think the future looks like. Obviously, Xbox has sort of led the charge the past year or so. And I wanted to pick both my brain and your brain about what exactly it looks like. We talked about this very briefly in the last episode of No Limits. But it's obviously even today, we've seen some comments from some of the higher ups at Sony about multi-platform and shifting away from hardware into ecosystem and player engagement. And we're entering a new chapter as a channel, and apparently so is PlayStation. And it's scary and exciting. And I think I want to know what your opinion is on what this looks like, because there's been a lot of differing opinions. This is relatively speculative, obviously, at this point, because we don't have a lot of information to go off of. We know that Helldivers 2 is coming later this month. Marathon from Bungie. What else? What's going on, Kev?
So I've mentioned this in passing on social media, and even I think I wrote into our friends over at the Xbox Expansion Pass about this. But this all started really with that job listing, right? Like 2 weeks ago or so, where PlayStation put up a very high-paying job for someone that is looking to expand their multi-platform strategy, right? All right, the Epic, Steam, Nintendo, Xbox was mentioned, and I think people jumped the gun. I think they're reading a bit too much into a job listing, where I'm not saying games won't come to other platforms. I think the immediate reaction of God of War and The Last of Us and the whole slate are going over, I think that is a bit too far-fetched for me at this point in time. And I say that because it would be silly of PlayStation not to look into this for future, right? Like, they need to future-proof their business. They need to have someone in this role where, hey, how would it look if we did do this? If we did expand things to Xbox? Maybe they do start doing something like this. Maybe they start small. And this is kind of what my feeling is for the moment. Is live service seems like a very nail, just put that right there. Like I can almost guarantee live service games are going to be coming multi-platform, PC, Xbox. They should really do Switch too if the games can run on it. But your live service initiative has been floundering for an incredible while, right? It's time to try to make some money back, whether that's Marathon, Fair Games, if that ever comes out, whatever other live service games you have in the pipeline, they need to have those other platforms ready to go. I think Marvel Tokon should also be included in that conversation. I know it's a second party deal, but it doesn't really make sense to me for that to skip the Xbox ecosystem. It doesn't really make sense for me to even skip the Nintendo Switch ecosystem, considering all the fighting games that have gone over there. So I think we initially start with those. And for me, anything past that right now is really just hopium, copia, whatever you want to call it, right? It is pie in the sky dreamers saying, hey, well, Xbox did this. And I do, first of all, I have no problem with games going everywhere, right? Like I'm completely fine with Xbox's strategy. I I hosted an Xbox podcast if you're new here for 5 years, all right? Yeah. So for me, I'm like, okay, Xbox was forced into the multi-platform position. PlayStation and Nintendo are not in a position where they're forced to do anything. So anything they do in the near future, even a few years out, probably, it's going to be very experimental, very limited, very gaining data, seeing how it affects sales of their consoles, seeing what games work on what platforms, right? So I think we really just need to take a step back and let's see how things unfold. I think everyone just needs to slow down with the whole PlayStation is immediately becoming a third-party publisher, though.
Yeah. I think that's the logical conclusion to come to. You look at Sony licensing IP and partnering up with Bandai, getting Freedom Wars out there, Patapon, everybody's golf. Like, those aren't coming to Xbox, but they're coming to everything else. And I know that people have pointed that out, but I think it's a salient point in that if you aren't going to be willing to put those kind of IP on Xbox for whatever reason, whether it's you don't think they'll sell or you don't want to put games on Xbox, period, I don't know that you are going to gatekeep those and then port over God of War next week. Who knows? I think anything's possible, but I think that if that were to happen, it's an incredibly short-sighted move from Sony. That they'd no doubt make a lot of money, as would Nintendo putting games on other platforms, and obviously Xbox is making a lot more money. I think there is a potential. Like I've toyed the idea of if Sony is, as they've sort of alluded to a couple of times, interested in exploring their back catalog. And again, the whole Bandai IP might dissuade me of this notion. But if they were to like resurrect some IP, even if it's not live service, I think that there is a chance maybe that they go a bit wider. Not necessarily everything, I think that is a caveat that people should probably factor in here, that PlayStation is obviously exploring third-party platforms more, but that doesn't mean that every game that they ship is going to be going third-party. There's nuance, and it also means that even the games that do go third-party aren't necessarily going to everything. As we've just seen, things can go to PC or PC and Switch, or Xbox and PC, or just Xbox. So, I replied to Joe from Trophy Room on Twitter when he was making a comment about it, and I said, like, the whole red lines quote is like a bit of a tainted thing to bring up now, but I think that there are actual red lines for PlayStation currently.
Me too.
As things stand. And like you said, being more experimental, like they put Forbidden West on PS Plus, and that was experimenting to see what happened. Did they gain a massive amount of subscribers by putting a first-party game onto the subscription service much earlier than they usually do? And they figured out that they lost over $100 million. So, you know, it was apparently PlayStation, according to Jez Corden, it was PlayStation pushing for Helldivers on Xbox, which is, I
Which
think,
makes total sense. That's
yeah,
an
exactly.
Xbox coded game.
And also, like, technically that would be the case anyway, because it's a PlayStation IP. Like, Arrowhead don't own that. So they could speak with PlayStation, like, could you bring it? But in terms of the actual spearheading process of bringing it to Xbox, it would inherently be PlayStation. And it's a perfect test bed, I think. It's like, if you're going to bring a game across, it's live service, it's Xbox coded, it's ODST flavor, you know, that's perfect. So we'll see what happens. And in the same way that, you know, on No Limits, we were saying, if you're interested in seeing more Xbox games on PlayStation, buy them, you know, support this. I would say the exact same thing to Xbox players. Like, if you want the potential of seeing more PlayStation games, the only way that becomes a possibility is if you buy Helldivers.
Yeah, shout out Freight Conductor in the chat. He says, "Is this in regards to the VP's comment about being less hardware focused in the future?" Yes and no. It's more of a general conversation about the job listing, the comments. Certainly, I do think those comments needed a little context added around them, as they were in reference to a question and more along the lines of the entire, not just gaming, but their business strategy. Like, we're investing in Crunchyroll, and we're investing in Bandai, and we're trying to build communities outside of just platforms, our TVs, our gaming hardware, stuff like that, right? That's how I interpret it anyway. People are free to read it however they want to read it. But it is more of a generalized conversation, because the thing I can't get out of my mind, and people that have listened to Project X Talk in the past have heard me say this, right? Where I still can't wrap my mind around how Xbox makes an open platform with other storefronts work financially. Because you go from, hey, all of our, like, we sell a third party game, we get 30% of that revenue, right? We sell a first party game, we get 100% of that revenue. Now, if Steam's on the box, we go, hey, we're only getting a max of 70%, right, of the revenue. So you're losing the 30% that you would have if you just kept it a closed ecosystem. Not to mention the fact that, like, you wouldn't be able to subsidize the cost of the console anymore. So, like, I'm fully expecting, and I think a lot of people are, since hardware seems to be going up in price, I'm expecting consoles to be near $1,000 for next generation, which at that point, like, I just got a PC for a few $100s more than that. Like, people need to start having these conversations, right, about, like, what they want to invest into. My only thing, though, is I'm thinking about this, like, devil's advocate, right, Sam?
Mm-hmm.
If consoles are going to be that pricey, and they are going to be more PC like even if a PlayStation 6 is like $1,100 or $1,000, let's say, right? PlayStation knows, hey, if you're buying this, you're probably not buying anything else. So why would they not put their games elsewhere? Because they know, hey, if you bought that $1,000 Xbox, no chance you can afford our system in conjunction, right? That's the only thing in my mind, that, like, things are too expensive and they're trying to react to those market conditions. But also, I wonder, arguing against myself, because there's so many angles I'm here. I'm trying to argue back and forth, where if you start putting all your big games everywhere, not just PC, on Xbox, on PlayStation, does your current player base say, well, I've always wanted an Xbox, or hey, I'm just going to go to PC, or hey, I'm just going to get a Switch because it's the cheapest? Like, how many of them leave your platform, and then you're losing a substantial amount of revenue from your storefront, where you were getting 100% of first party, 30% of third party, subscription costs? Like, I just can't make the math make sense for me to really come in line with, hey, this third party strategy really makes sense.
Yeah. I and we saw that over 50% of PlayStation's revenue is from 10 games, none of which they own. So
Disgusting.
yeah, it is. And PlayStation would obviously love to change that, no doubt. But you need that hardware to support it. So I think that just further solidifies the idea that PlayStation, if they do push further into multi-platform, will do it very, very slowly and very carefully, because they are hardware dependent in a way that the Xbox no longer is. And I think that there is the potential maybe of, and the Venn diagram of users, of consumers that this affects is probably quite small, so I wouldn't put too much weight behind this. But there is also the potential of, next gen Xbox going to have Steam integration. So if an Xbox player today also has a Steam account and they have purchased PlayStation games on Steam, because that's the only place that they can get them outside of getting a PlayStation, which they might not want to do. If PlayStation don't port their games to Xbox and they just wait until that Steam integration is live, those Xbox players have no reason to repurchase the game because they will have access to the games via Steam. If you port the games now in the interim before that Steam integration goes live, you might get people double dipping. Even if they already own the game on Steam, they'll buy it again on Xbox, or they'll just buy it on Xbox flat out, even if they don't have it. So they might be trying to capitalize on that, knowing that the next Xbox hardware is probably not going to sell amazingly, if we're being honest, and be an enthusiast item. So maybe if they view the console war as over, as everybody seems to be saying it is, maybe they are just trying to, in the nicest way possible, squeeze a little bit of extra money out of the ecosystem before Steam makes porting irrelevant.
So my question about that is, wouldn't it make more sense to just put them on PC and then wait? Because you don't have to spend money to develop the Xbox port, and the Xbox players are going to buy them anyway. And how many people are actually going to double dip? Like, I'm sure they're doing these calculations, but like maybe it's a game by game basis. Like, hey, we think they'll double dip for this type of game, but not this one, like a single player versus a live service, or a smaller game versus a bigger game, right? Like, I wonder how that factors in. I don't have the answer for that, but that's just something, like, if they just wait, could solve itself and they could save development costs.
That is true. And I agree with Nisa in the chat saying that PlayStation needs a PC app. Like, absolutely they do. And I think that they will. But the counter to what you just said is that in the same PlayStation games on Steam isn't a novelty anymore. Like, we just expect that in the exact same way that we expect Xbox games to come to PC and now, frankly, to PlayStation as well. But PlayStation games on Xbox is a novelty, which is why one of the reasons that I expect Helldivers to do very well. In the same way that if God of War or Ghost or Spider-Man came to Xbox, it would sell very well. And you saw the same when PlayStation games came to Steam initially. The first few sold incredibly well, and then it sort of tapered off. I think that there is a novelty to putting some PlayStation games on Xbox.
For sure.
Even if it takes money to develop the port and you could just wait until the Steam version. But that Steam integration on Xbox, and then you can access the PlayStation games that you already own, isn't really exciting for Xbox players. Whereas right now you're like, oh, I have PlayStation games on the Xbox that I already own that I didn't have to buy another bit of hardware to get access to. And that is some easy money. What impact that has on the platform and, the idea of exclusivity, I don't know. That is a different question entirely, but there is that to consider as well. Because I know that it didn't quite work the same way with Xbox games to PlayStation, but then Xbox did port, I think, weird games first to PlayStation. Like, you can't expect that to sell incredibly well. Whereas if Gears, I know, crazy, but if that was the first one,
oh yeah,
I mean, Gears is going to sell. That's a bad example because Gears is going to sell well now anyway. Or like Forza, right? Like that. If those were the ones, you would see the success that we're seeing now. So it would validate the strategy more.
I think I know you put God of War on Xbox, it's gonna sell millions of copies. Like I'm
Yeah,
fairly confident in saying that, just especially for the novelty of it, like
yeah,
people would buy it. Um, in turn, we can transition soon. Yes, Hi-Fi Rush was awesome. I agree
it
with that.
was.
In terms of what games are possible, though, and then we can transition off this. Are I would say maybe they're multimedia properties
Mm.
first, if they're really like, and I'm not talking about The Last of Us, right? Like, because that's already out there. But like, aren't they making a Gravity Rush movie, or did they cancel that?
Uh, I think that that's in limbo as far as
Okay,
I
because I was thinking
understand.
like Gravity Rush on the Switch to go
Yeah,
coincide with a movie coming out, like stuff like that. I think makes a lot of sense. I don't know whether Ghost of Tsushima really, like, if they're cool letting that one go. Like I know because Ghost of Yote's coming. Like I don't know how much they value Ghost of Tsushima versus like, because to me Ghost is, I'm sure, a phenomenal game, but I don't view it in the same tier as a God of War, Last of Us, a
not
Horizon,
quite.
right? Like
No,
it's not
no.
quite that IP, it's not quite that notoriety. So like, do they have sort of that tier system where like, hey, these ones are off limits, but these ones we can go.
Maybe, yeah. And like a perfect example, if they didn't cancel the reboot, would have been something like Twisted Metal. You know, I know technically that was a live service as well, so that would be more likely to go anyway. But yeah, potentially. But I guess the issue is that Sony is pushing for pretty much all of their big games to be multimedia now. So I mean, that might fall into the trap anyway, where if they do go
Hmm.
fully multi-platform, then that point is true
Yeah.
regardless. But I think I would say if PlayStation IP does go across, it would probably, I think, be IP that is less relevant. So something like a Gravity Rush would be an excellent shout, I would say.
Give me
I,
Sackboy.
yeah, I think something like, I mean, Little Big Planet is a little bit weird because it's a lot of user generated content, and I think the servers are gone now.
No, we don't need that. Give the single player content.
Oh, yeah, you could just do a base version of that, or even Sackboy Big Adventure from early PS5. I think um,
You-
this is hopium, but I also think that like you could do like salvage things from the PS3 gen. So like if
yeah.
you're going to do anything with Killzone or Resistance or Infamous, I think you bundle those trilogies.
I think
Um,
Killzone and Resistance on an Xbox console do very well.
Yeah, you bundle those up. Not only do you make the PlayStation diehards happy or happy to see anything being done with those IP, but you also give a proper test bed to see how successful a new or a reboot might be for those franchises as well. You give them the greatest chance of success, and a lot of those would have multiplayer elements as well, so that would help multi-platform wise. So we'll see, man. I'm not expecting much because from my
Hmm.
understanding, this position that was the job listing might
It's,
have a new name, but from my understanding, it was
oh, I'm
essentially
sure.
an existing position
Hmm.
because they were reporting to people that already have jobs that are dealing with Xbox and PC. So I find it hard that given MLB has been on Xbox for many years now, um, and other things like that, I think it'd be weird that they're finding someone to head that part of their strategy now, even if they
Hmm.
were expanding it. Um,
Agreed.
Time will tell.
You know what we need is Astrobot, but with expanded bots for Xbox franchises, for Nintendo franchises.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds great. Just what I want.
How cool would it be if you could get Master Chief and Astrobot?
Yeah, that would
Or
be
Mario
so
pops out.
sick.
That would never happen. Nintendo would never let Mario show. But imagine if a Mario bot was in there.
Imagine.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see what happens with PlayStation and their multi-platform strategy. Why don't we jump into my topic, which is about censorship, everyone, just like I censored that troll in the chat. Uh, so, if you are not aware, recently an Australian group called Collective Shout has been petitioning pay sources here in the United States, Visa, MasterCard, your payers, right? That control our money, right? It's our money, but they control it. It's really cool how that works. They petition them to ban or well, not allow payment for certain games that they deem immoral, reprehensible, disgusting, whatever you want to call it, right? And I will say before we get into this, some of the games I can understand why they want them. Like, I'm not going to read the description, but there's a game called No Mercy. If you want to look that one up, absolutely vile, disgusting garbage. All right. My issue comes with the fact that it's not the storefronts that are policing this, because so far we have had MasterCard and Visa really push Steam and itch.io to remove certain content from their platforms. And they went a little overboard and removed some games that probably didn't deserve it, right? Didn't have those immoral or disgusting types of, horror, sexual acts, minor violence, stuff like that in it, right? They remove stuff like LGBTQ games or things that deal with difficult topics like self-harm and mental health. Like, they remove things that didn't need to be removed. Collective Shout has seen this as a total win. However, I very much view this as a complete overstep of the payers' input into this system, right? In my mind, this should fall strictly on the storefronts. This should fall on the Steam, Epic, Xbox Play. Like, they should curate their game stores better. It should not be up to Visa and MasterCard what we get to spend our money on. And I'm not even saying that those games shouldn't exist, because freedom of speech, freedom of, like, if you want to make a disgusting game like No Mercy and keep it to yourself or share it with your friends, your whatever you want, that is your right. You're not hurting anyone. I think it's disgusting, but that is
get
your
some
right.
help probably.
Yeah, go to therapy. But to say that, hey, you can't buy this because we disagree with it, we're going to push all our beliefs onto you, that is where I draw the line. I think we're on a slippery slope to something like, hey, we think that your stellar blade is too sexy, right? And I think some of that's fear mongering, some of it is a slippery slope. So I'm kind of in the middle here, where I think, are we really at risk of losing things like Grand Theft Auto? Are we really at risk of losing things like Wu Chong Fallen Feathers because the female main character could be considered gooner bait? It's those type of things where I'm like, might be a little fear mongering. But there is also reality where they keep pushing and pushing until they say, hey, we want all women to be wearing nothing but fully clothed all the time. They can't be attacked in a game. We want dialogue to be like this. Like, I think there's a slippery slope that we approach when you have these types of groups, which are totally fine. They can petition, they can have their freedom of expression and believe whatever they want. Just don't push it on me. That's where I'm at. So I say I'm gonna open the floor. How are you feeling about Collective Shout, the censorship in the gaming industry that we're currently seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much just vehemently against it. I can understand the intent behind it if it is coming from a truly noble and altruistic place. I just don't have confidence that that is the case. I think it is a very slippery slope, as you said, in terms of censorship. I'm, I'm a trained actor. I've my bread and butter is performance and art and theater and expression and telling personal stories, no matter what they might entail.
Mm-hmm.
And like, to be frank, if we are translating what Collective Shout and pressure groups like this are doing, if we're translating that outside of the gaming space, it would be the equivalent of like burning books, and you don't have to like what other people say. That doesn't mean that people don't have the right to say it. And we don't have to get very political here, but clearly there is some degree of censorship or attempts at censorship happening in like the US.
He's from the UK, so he can say that.
That's right. That's right. If you couldn't tell, I am indeed a Brit. And we've got our own problems. Like we just had a new law passed, which means that we have to verify identification if we want to access any kind of adult content.
I hear you get arrested for tweets.
Apparently so. I think that might be a little bit overblown, but it can happen. I think it's more on what the tweets are rather than
like
probably the contents
at
of
Prime
the tweet that's the
Minister.
problem.
I'm coming for you.
Probably that is what would have done it. Yeah, and that's a bad thing at the end of the day, because I can't remember who said it, but in terms of collective shout, I heard somebody say, today it's about sexual violence, but tomorrow it could be about sex, or it could be about violence. And again, you don't have to like that there's sex in games or that there's violence in games. You think about the amount of times we've heard over the years of, did Call of Duty inspire this, or did whatever? It's like, what could it play a factor? Yes, but to suggest that it is the defining factor, that it is in any way a majority in influencing anybody's opinion or decisions to do anything, I don't think that playing a game that talks about a survivor of sexual assault is going to encourage someone to sexually assault someone, And I think that is the kind of narratives that people like this are pushing. Or even if they aren't intentionally pushing that narrative, it enables people that want to push those kind of narratives. It makes it much easier for them to do that. And I think that's not good. People should be able to tell their stories. Because
I think about, like, there's mainstream games that tackle tough issues like sexual violence, right? This might be a little out there, but what if Collective Shout sees that scene in The Last of Us Part 1 with David and Ellie, right? And decides, hey, we know what he wanted to do to her. This game shouldn't be allowed. I think that is a massive overstep and would deprive people of a truly remarkable story that is impactful in so many ways that are not related to sexual violence. I think that having people see through different mediums these tales can also be a therapeutic process, right? And I'm very much with you. And it's funny to me, as someone with a master's degree in psychology, and I've taken courses and we've had discussions in my undergrad and my graduate studies about the impacts of video games on your mental health, specifically anger states, right? And all studies, all clinically like acceptable studies show that, hey, you may get mad at a video game, but that anger dissipates after a few minutes. Video games are not causing people to become violent. They are not causing people to go out and commit heinous acts. And we have been arguing this for nearly 40 years at this point, right? Like, I'm a little older than you, Sam, right? So Mortal Kombat, obviously I was a little young for that, but I remember the GTA San Andreas discussions on Fox News and CNN. I remember people being outraged about Mass Effect having a sex scene and that being the news cycle for so long, where, first of all, it's an adult rated game. You have to be an adult to play it. And the sex scene is very tame compared to what you see in most movies and television shows, even these days. So it boggles my mind that we're sitting here 2025 and still not understanding how impactful these things can be to people, how social sim elements can be an escape for people, how different storytelling elements can really resonate with someone. Like, oh, I never thought about that perspective. I never understood what these people went through after this experience, or how hard this traumatic event can affect someone. I think of, and I haven't played it, but you have, and people have been bringing up like 1,000 X Resist, right?
Mhm.
As a story that I've been told. That might not have been a story that Collective Shout wanted told, right?
Yeah.
We go into those lines where I'm like, at what, you need to trust the consumer. You need to, and if the consumer does something wrong with their money, then the storefront should take the game off. But also, like, we have legal authorities, right? Like, if you're buying something you shouldn't be, all right, like you're gonna get in trouble. Okay, I think we just need to understand that point, because it the system we have right now works. We typically don't get games that don't belong there. We don't have things like Super Columbine RPG Massacre
Mhm.
on storefronts. All right. And that's a real game that exists. Someone
Yep.
made that garbage, but we can't buy it. And that is the system working how it should be. But nobody told Visa and MasterCard, hey, don't let them do that. Don't let them buy that. All right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And like, just in general, I mean, we sort of skirt around the point of like the things that help us grow as people often are the things that challenge us or present us with a different worldview or perspective or opinion. And that's why, discourse, political or otherwise, is so just toxic nowadays, because people don't want to have the discussion. And it's the same thing here of like, you don't have to play the game if you don't want to. If you don't, no one is forcing you to play a game like mouthwashing, right?
I want to
Mouthwashing is one
play
of the most
mouthwashing though.
disturbing things I've played. It deals with some real heavy stuff that Collective Shout most certainly would not like. I'll tell you that. But it's also one of them. I cannot stop thinking about mouthwashing. And I can say that for several games, even, 1,000 Times Resist, as you said. Like, the idea of losing losing the things that have had the most profound impact on me gaming wise. And it's the same argument about like immigration. No one is saying we should have open borders. No one is saying that we should just let any game onto
Yeah,
platforms,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. We need
Right. But
moderation,
there
but we
is
have that.
nuance in the conversation. You can't just say, oh, well, because these few bad things are here, we're just going to not let anything of that ilk in. It's like, no, 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 no. You can't be that just black and white in the conversation. You have to be nuanced. And it comes back to what you said at the top. It should be the responsibility of the storefronts. People outside of that system should have no say whatsoever. If Steam want to allow a game onto their platform that is heinous in whatever way, that's on them. They will face the repercussions of that.
Exactly. Yep.
Like, I don't know why we have to gate check everyone, and actually not even gate check, because you're not even giving the games the chance to come onto the platform now. So yeah, it's real bad. It seems like Valve at least is fighting it. I saw GOG as well. I redeemed actually
Yeah.
the bundle that they put up, the freedom to buy. I think that's expired now, which is a shame. But if they do another thing, you should keep an eye out, especially with GOG. It seems people are pushing back, which is good, but I am concerned that, especially in today's climate, just globally, not just in the US, I'm worried that this is far from the last we've heard about this kind of conversation. So, I mean,
I certainly hope it doesn't get any more restrictive, because I think, well, the way I look at it is, if you try to ban something like a GTA, like Rockstar 2K, like, they have a lot of money to fight you in court for. And if my money is against them or an activist group, I think I'm going with them, right? Like, but again, we go back to our current political climate, where the law doesn't really matter sometimes in the current situation. What people say is really all that's going on, and I'll leave it at that. It's just it's a disappointing thing to see. I did want to bring this up just because think Xbox is a little quiet in the news, but this is also a big news story that's been just kind of progressing throughout the weeks. And I see Kyle here in the chat says, I saw the solution will be you don't buy the game directly. You buy credit on Steam, and then you can use that to buy whatever game you want. That way, Visa and MasterCard have no say. It's a good workaround.
Yeah, but then, you know, if these corporations are, you know, the ones that control the money, it's like if they are dedicated enough, they will find a way to try and circumvent and block that as well. So I'd rather just not have the caveat be necessary, you know, and I know that Carl would feel the same, but if that is a workaround that needs to happen to make sure that we can still buy the games that we want, then great. But the last thing we want right now is for the games industry to become more risk averse.
Yeah, that is true.
And this is only going to incentivize people to be super PG, super safe, super formulaic.
People
and
aren't going to want to tackle tough topics, tough
that
subject
is
matter.
At some point going to cause the industry to collapse in on itself because everything is just the same and homogenous, even more so than people claim it is now. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with Collective Shout. Why don't we go to our Patreon topic now? If you want to get on the show and have your topic be our third topic, go to patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia. $1 a month gets you the option to write in, be featured on the show, or if you don't get chosen for this show, our bonus Patreon exclusive show. So this week's topic comes from longtime supporter Marcus O'Neill. He says, you both have a lot of experience reviewing games. What are your processes for reviewing games? Can it affect your enjoyment of the game? And how has your approach evolved from your first reviews? Thank you, Marcus, for writing in. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. Sam, do you want to tackle this first?
Sure. I will warp the question slightly. I don't have too much experience reviewing games, but I do have a lot of experience covering games generally, and obviously writing guides. I've talked about this on a few different occasions. I think we mentioned it years back when we did one of the first I Hate My Friends. I mentioned this, and I've talked about it a few times on No Limits. In terms of my process, I mean, it's quite convoluted, so I won't go super in depth, but it is very context dependent on what the game is, what genre it's in, what experience I've had with games in that genre. It could even be as fundamental as what games I've had experience with from that specific developer. So it's very, very context dependent. Process generally, though, for me, if you want a little bit of in the weeds, I will boot up the game on whatever platform it's given to me in code form, pre-release. I will start playing it. I will map out in Google Docs and in a Google spreadsheet, map out what specifically I'm covering, what my designations are on the project, and I will actively keep that in mind while playing. I will stop and start. I will often, as I'm going, get game capture, not just for screenshots that I can implement into the guides, but also that I can just refer back to footage and watch it back to make sure that I don't miss anything. And it's a very stop-start process. So that takes a lot longer. And I know of other freelancers in the guide space that don't do it that way and are probably a little bit more streamlined. But the way that works best for me in making sure that I am as finicky and paying as much attention to minute detail as possible, that's how I do it. Can it affect my enjoyment? Yes. I always use Elden Ring as an example. It wasn't necessarily the playing of the game, because Elden Ring is obviously fantastic, and I still love it even after the fact. But I wasn't having fun on my first playthrough of that game. And I think that whilst it can be a really big privilege to cover games prior to release in whatever capacity, whether it's reviewing, guides, whatever, when your first experience of that game is at least partially diverted mentally to, I have to make sure I'm paying attention, taking notes, keeping an eye out for things, formulating opinions, um, it detracts. You can pause during a cutscene and you're like, well, I have to, go to the toilet or go grab a drink or whatever. That's what normally happens when you're playing a game. But when you have to do that and, begin editing a video for a how-to or writing up a script, that's going to take a lot longer and it can break up the momentum a lot. And for shorter games or smaller games or games where breaks are encouraged, that's fine. But for a game like Spider-Man 2, which I also covered, um, my first experience of that campaign, that story, was sullied a bit, and that bums me out. I still love the game, but
You
it's
could
it's
have
a
loved
it's a,
it more.
exactly. I wish, you sometimes ask the question of like, what game do you wish you could go back and play again if your memory was wiped for the first time? And like, the truth is, I have a lot of those.
Alan Wake too.
Yeah, yeah. Didn't have to cover that, thankfully, but that's just the nature of the beast, though, right? Like, if you're going to do this kind of coverage, you kind of just have to accept that is a trade-off. And then finally, in terms of approach evolving, that is very nuanced and very subjective. I just think over the 4.5 years that I've done guides work with IGN, I just know the ins and outs of their processes. I know how pages are formatted. So often when I am drafting up the Google Docs and the spreadsheets, I just can have things default where a page is already half written technically by the time I get around to actually formulating the walkthrough, which saves a lot of time. And I think in the same way that when you begin playing games, and I mean for the very first time when you're a young kid, for example, you kind of have to learn the language of how games work. You learn that A or X is jump and things like that. And you do the same when you're reviewing games or writing guides for games. You kind of have to pay attention to how games work. And you're like, okay, so I'm covering a Souls-like, so I know that realistically there's going to be a level design where there is a split path. And you're doing this as a normal player anyway. But when you're covering a game, you sort of do that twice over where you're like, yes, I know that there's going to be a split path. One's going to be a shortcut that loops around back to the initial area. One's going to go off to the next boss. You have to have that foresight as you normally would as a player, but you also then have to write up that, or you have to factor that in your consideration of how good the level design is if you're reviewing. And that inherently can also speed up the writing process, because if I'm writing, oh, so I took the left path here and I found a shortcut, I can probably infer that the other path is the main one. And I can begin writing up a paragraph about, so if you take the right path, you'll end up going further into X area and doing X, Y thing. So that's how it's a learning process, as with any job, anything in life. It's not particularly unique to games coverage, I don't think.
It's funny to hear you say that, because I feel a lot, even though I don't do guides, right? I feel a lot of what you're saying in terms of me tackling this. Like, how is, I think I'll start from the beginning, but like my approach to reviewing games now is much different than when I started, where when I started, it was like, okay, I'm gonna play the whole game. I will randomly capture footage and then I'll write a script at the end and talk over it, right? And that was kind of my process when I first started. And you can see that in some of my very early reviews. I think now my process for reviewing games is very much, I well, first of all, it depends on the game. If it's a JRPG, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little pressed to meet a deadline, most likely, because they're longer games. And that certainly, I think the biggest one for me was Trails from Zero with that one, where that's a long game and it's a lot of dialogue. I had one session where it was 2 hours of me just hitting the X button. I didn't do anything except 2 hours of dialogue. And when you're sitting there, it's like, okay, I have to get through this game and I'm trying to enjoy it, but also I know that there's an embargo deadline in a few days, and I'm sitting here 2 hours of just hitting the X button. I don't feel like I've accomplished much. It's stressful, and I always say Trails from Zero is my least favorite Trails game, and I've reviewed a lot of them. We've been given codes for a lot of them. I reviewed a lot of them. It's still my least favorite because I've taken a much different approach with the other ones because say, hey, I know how long these games are now. I can kind of I set deadlines. Like I want to be at this chapter by this day. I want to be at this chapter by this day. I want to accomplish this, right? I think setting goals is good, and that keeps me on track for a game and lets me play it at more of a reasonable pace, I would say, because it's not fun to say, hey, I got to get this review out in 2 days, but I still have like 10 hours of gameplay, so I have to spend all day in front of my TV just like playing through it. Like that's not a good time. That makes you feel rushed. You can't enjoy it. My current process, again, space it out a little more. I Depending on the game, I will set goals, chapters, what I want to do. But I do open my phone app a lot, my notes app on my phone a lot of the time when I'm playing. And if there's something I like, I make note of that. If there's something I dislike, I make note of that. And then we'll see how I feel as we progress throughout the game because mechanics can evolve, they can be implemented in different ways. Things that feel bad at the start could grow on you as you get through the game. So I like to look back and okay, I felt this way 10 hours ago. How do I feel about it now? If I still feel the same way, I'm probably going to mention it in the review, right? So I'm I'm very intentional in my note taking. I'll write a script, but it's nowhere near as structured as I used to write a script. I rely a lot on bullet points now, as opposed to before I would almost write like I would write an IGN review article essentially, and then I would just kind of read that. And I don't think that was the best review style. I think that my best review personally is Hellblade 2. Like that's probably my favorite review that I've done for the channel. And it's probably one of our most popular reviews too. So I think there's no coincidence there. But it's also like I was passionate about that game. So when you can review a game you're actually passionate about, and that's what I'm trying to do more of these days, like only request a game if I actually want to play it or someone on the team actually wants to play it. There's been games that surprised me, right? And then you build that path. Lifeless Moon was one we got where I was like, I was going to give it to someone on the team. Nobody really wanted it. I was like, all right, I'll play it. I really like that game. That surprised the hell out of me. So when I went to the review, I was like, I'm very high in this game. Entropy Center, another one where I'm like, this is a puzzle portal saga. I love that game. I could not stop talking about that game. I love that aspect of reviewing games, especially as a smaller outlet like ours, where we get indie AA games that like people probably may not like, they probably haven't heard of. If you can share your love of something that you just discovered, like I never heard this game, but now I'm all in on it. I love that as part of it. So there are times where I feel like, hey, reviewing this didn't really, I don't like it as much as I wanted to. And there are times where like, hey, I like this more than I ever could have possibly imagined. I think a game that maybe was affected by my, this game, I don't really like this game, is Ruffy in the Riverside, which was one I was super looking forward to this year. And shout out to Pirate PR and the developer over there. They sent us a code for it. It just wasn't what I expected of it. And I don't know if that's me going in with expectations, if that's me playing it under review embargo. So I'm like, I can't talk to anyone about it. I can't like see what anyone else's experience is. And then I get that feeling of, well, what if I'm the outlier? What if like everyone else loves it and I'm just gonna like put out a review that's like crapping on it? But I didn't crap on it. First of all, it's a good game. It's just not the what I wanted. But I do get that self-conscious feeling sometimes when you don't know what other people think, and you can't ask because I'm like, I'm not supposed to talk about this, right? So it's a very interesting feeling playing a game for a review. Very privileged. I'm always thankful whenever we get a review code. We've been lucky to get enough of them, but hopefully it's an experience we can continue feeling. I'll continue improving my process, and I'm going to try to develop a system where it doesn't really take away from my enjoyment, because I think of games like Trails. What was the last Trails game I got? Like, there's too many of them. I can't remember. I can't. One of the Trails games I really loved, and I played that for Ease 9. I played for embargo, and I love that game. And then everyone crapped on it, and I was like, I thought it was great. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So it can go both ways, but that's really my process. I take notes. I'm more intentional what I record. I don't know if I mentioned that, but like if there's a mechanic, I want to record that mechanic to show it off in the review. If there's something I know I want to talk about I don't like, I want to record that and show it off in the review. I want to put my voice over that footage now, which I've been trying to do more often.
Yeah. I think the only addendum I would add is like a perfect example of what I'm about to say is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I did the main walkthrough for. I'm not super well versed in like Final Fantasy VII lore. I played Remake like in prep for it. I managed to get through that game prior to the Rebirth project kicking off. But I was playing through Rebirth and had to cover the main story. And there was just stuff happening that I was like, I have literally no idea who you are, what's happening,
so funny.
why it's happening. And I had to somehow explain that. But it was a really clairvoyant moment for me, because it reminded me that, especially with guides, you have to write it from the perspective of somebody who doesn't understand or know what's going on anyway. That's why they're looking up the guide. So when you're detailing something like a main walkthrough, describing the story and explaining a bit of a cutscene, if the game doesn't give you the context of who this person is in the moment, it's not your job as a writer to deduce who it is and give that information to the player, because then you'd be spoiling something. So it was quite a liberating feeling, actually, where I then knew from that point going forwards, from last year covering Rebirth, if I am on side quests or if I am on main walkthrough or whatever, any part of guides coverage, actually, it doesn't matter if you, especially pre-release, when you again can't speak to anyone, like you were saying, you don't have other guides to refer to make sure that you're correct or you haven't missed something.
That can be a pain sometimes, especially
if really
you're stuck. I'm like, I don't know what to do.
You just have to figure it out. And that is validating for sure, but it's also infuriating. And I think that reminding yourself that games are inherently a learning experience, even if you know the language of games, you kind of just have to take each product as it comes, and you are a consumer experiencing this game for the first time, and your job as a guide writer is to eventually know it all so that you can tell the people looking up the guide. It's not your job to know everything immediately. And I think that is something that can get lost even on the reviewing side, which I have less experience in. With just an opinion, it's a subjective take. People always look at IGN reviews and they're like, why are they giving everything a 7? Why have they given this a 7 but this a 9?
IGN is a collective.
Precisely.
You understand? So like you all come to one opinion and you put it on the website.
Not even that. Because that used to be the case with IGN, where there was like a congregated score.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But for several years now, it is exclusive the opinion of that one reviewer. So you can disagree with the review. That's obviously always your entitlement. But it is, I think, you're like, why is this game got a 7 and this game got a 7? They aren't even closely, in terms of quality. One is obviously better. Well, that's because two different people reviewed it, or even the same person reviewed it but has different taste to you. And I think that
You know
that's
what I
something to keep in mind.
you know what I that brings up, and this could be the last point before we start to
Mm.
wrap the show up. I don't like numbers. We don't use them here at Save the Game Media. We do a recommend, don't recommend system, right? Because I think that I can only give you my experience. I can only tell you if I would tell you to play the game. I don't think putting a number on it does that, because a 7 to me is very different to other people. Like, I'm notorious, and everyone in our Discord knows this, for playing 6s and being like, "This game is great, guys.
Yep.
I love it." All right. So I really, I don't think scores are the best way to do it. I know there's a reason scores exist. Aggregate sites gets you in the conversation, but I think in terms of coming to an outlet like ours, seeing a video review, I think having the discussion, the context, and then telling you, do I recommend this game? Do I not recommend this game? And who do I recommend this game for? Because I will sometimes put a caveat like, hey, if you like this type of genre, if you like this type of game, I think you would be into this. But if you're not into these type of games, probably steer clear, right?
Yeah. And I think, like, people always they skip to the end of the IGN video to see what number they gave the game. But by doing so, you're skipping the scripted video prior to that where people explain their opinions. So I always say to people, if you are interested in looking up what this site reviews a game, go read the written review
Mm-hmm.
and actually, like, read the written review. And even more so than that, look who wrote the review and then look at their previous reviews, see what
Yep.
else they reviewed, see what your opinions are on those games. And then you can tell whether their taste will align with yours. And you can infer from that whether the review of this newest game is going to be in line with what your potential opinion might be.
You,
So that's that.
I also like that, and we don't get to do these as much as probably I would like, but our spoiler cast review discussions are some, especially ones that you and I have done, some of my favorite conversations, some of the favorite
Yep.
content that I know Alan Wake 2, our Expedition 33 one might be one of our one of the best things on this channel if you haven't watched that yet. It's because, like, gives so much more context, so much more full thoughts than you can get in a non-spoilery video. Because, like, there's so many things in a game you can't talk about. You won't be able to without ruining the game for someone. So, like, it does add a layer of difficulty when you so badly want to say, hey, I love it for this reason. It made me think about this. Can't say that though without giving away the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, I get what Captain Logan is saying in the chat, like, not wanting to waste time watching a video on a game that has a bad score. But I think you're watching a video review either because you're actively interested in the game or you're morbidly curious. If you skip to the end and see a bad score and you're just morbidly curious, you can just move on. If you're interested in the game and you see a bad score, I would say that it's still worth
I'd like to hear about
listening
why
to the
it's bad.
review, because exactly, if you were interested in the game but you see a bad review, you probably want to see why it's bad. Because if you're interested in the game, there is a chance that you'll still like it, because both me and you, Kev, we just admitted we like some 5s and 6s, and there's
I,
nothing wrong with that.
I platinumed Clive and Wrench, which is a 3D platformer that I think is sitting at like a 48 on OpenCritic. All right. And I think it's phenomenal.
We don't have to get into the kinds of games I've platinumed, okay?
All right. Well, I think that will do it for the show tonight, Sam. Our inaugural episode. We did have a question from Brandon, but he's a patron, so I'm throwing it in the patron. But I think it'll fit better on the Patreon bonus exclusive episode. All right. So, Brandon, I did see your question. It'll go in the vault with all the other Patreon questions. Sam, before we go, can you let everyone know where they can find you, my friend?
Of course, people can find me anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney. That is Heaney.
Everyone go follow him. You can follow us at Save the Game Media over on Blue Sky. You can follow me specifically at the Muffin Mon. It's a 1 and 7 I own 7A. Until next week, we will see you. Thank you for tuning in to our inaugural episode. Thank you, chat. Love you guys.